Hello, my name is Cassandra Blanco. I am Roman Catholic, and I welcome you to my podcast. Today's guests are my friends Carl and Dana Boyd. Carl and Dana Boyd live in Florida, and they have been married 46 years and have 8 children, 28 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. 2 great-grandchildren. So today's podcast is just going to be about their experience being married and their wisdom for them to be able to pass on to those that are married, specifically Catholic marriage. So welcome to both of you. So why don't we just start off with where each of you were born, where you were raised, and just the beginning of your lives. So whoever wants to go first.
Hello, I was raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, in the Anglican Church. My mother was a widow from the time I was a baby, and I'm the youngest of 4. When I was about 12, I was invited to the Catholic Church by some friends, and I was intrigued and just felt peace from the time I entered the church. Just a sigh of relief. It had the answers to the questions that I had been asking. Why was I made? Why am I here? Where am I going? I just saw the beauty in the church, and when I was 14, my mother reluctantly allowed me to become a Catholic, and I was really on fire for the faith and somehow got a hold of good saint books, and the rest is history.
So I was born in Ithaca, New York, but moved to Roseville, Minnesota, which is a second-tier suburb north of St. Paul, at a pretty early age. So I was raised in Minnesota and consider myself a Minnesotan. Moved to Florida 33 years ago, something like that. But my family was Methodist. We went to church every Sunday. I remember growing up. We said grace at meals, but that was about it. Right and wrong, morality was taught apart from God and apart from the Bible. When I was 18, I met Dana, and she made it real clear to me real early on that she was going to marry a Catholic. And since my faith hadn't been really significant in my life, that was an easy choice to make. So I went and talked to the priest at her parish, and he gave me instruction and gave me a catechism. When I was a little kid, I played baseball, and I always studied the rule book because I wanted to win, and I treated the catechism like a rule book, and I studied, and this was the rules on life so that you could win at life. So I was baptized. I'd been baptized as a kid, so I wasn't baptized in the Catholic Church, but confirmed and brought into the Catholic Church and received First Communion and all the sacraments about a year after I met Dana, a little bit less than that, and that was the start of my Catholic faith.
Okay. So if we could hone in just actually on your dating time, your experience dating, anything you want to share about that time in your journey, any ups and downs about it, or just anything that you want to pass on as terms of advice to anybody that's dating and is considering marriage.
Well, it wasn't perfect because neither of us were really being given any moral guidance, but we did fall in love, and we would go to Mass together, and we would pray together. But like I said, we were not being given any moral guidance. We did get married very young. He was still in college, and I had just graduated. So we started having our family really young. What I would say is to couples dating is, well, make sure you surround yourself with other good people who are knowledgeable about the Lord, and do things, I think, in groups as much as possible. And friendships are really important, but there's so many good things, and I would recommend participating in a Theology of the Body course.
I don't think they had Theology of the Body when we were dating at that point in time. That was before Pope John Paul II.
Yeah. Anything you want to share, Carl, about your dating period? Or Anything about? Okay. So you guys then got married, and do you want to share just about your beginning of your marriage and the start of your marriage as well?
So, as Dana mentioned, I was in college, and working my way through college. College was reasonably affordable at that point in time. I was working 40 hours a week and could afford to go to college, and with some help, support the family. We lived with Dana's mother for a couple of years. We lived in married student housing for a year, and struggled financially quite a bit the first couple of years, but graduated with an engineering degree and got a job, and started to get our feet under us at that point in time. But by the time I graduated and had a job, we had 3 kids. So there was, financial struggles and also takes a lot of time to raise kids. So there was struggles going on, and it was hard, and we worked those problems together. And I think if we hadn't gone through those tough times, we would not have forged the relationship, the strong marriage relationship and bond that we have if we'd have started with an easier life. I'm glad we had that.
I think it was also really important that we stayed close to the parish, and along with that, we belonged to a Christian community of people, mostly Catholic, who gathered once a week, and we shared our journey with the Lord, and a spiritual director was there, and we could share if we wanted and talk about what we were going through. But she helped us so much, and all the older couples there, particularly the older women, helped me, mentor me on my faith journey, because having been raised in a home without a dad and my mom had to work all the time, I really didn't know what I was doing when it came to parenting and being a wife. But these people helped us so much. And then I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. Yeah, we were talking about the beginning of your marriage, but maybe we could just go in a little bit more. I know, Carl, you've talked about your journey of growing deeper in your faith. So maybe you could just hone in. What was it? What was the moment? What was the time period that made you take your Catholic faith more seriously?
So there were 2 things. Number one was we met a family that had just moved in at our parish up in Sanford. The gentleman's name was Chris, and he was a very devout and on fire Catholic. And they set up and invited us to holy hours on Sunday evenings, family holy hours, first at their home, and then later at the parish church, where they showed these videos from the apostolate for family consecration. And then we'd have together time afterwards. Kids would run around and play, and the adults would talk. And I saw in Chris a love for his wife and a love for his family that I didn't really have. And it became obvious really soon that stemmed from his love for God, his love for Jesus. And he pushed me in a lot of ways, but one of the things he encouraged was tithing, and I started tithing. And we had always had the kids involved in religious activities and retreats, and 2 of our sons were going off to seminary while they were in high school. And I remember that they announced this at the parish and had them all stand up. We stood up, and I'm thinking, boy, I need to be holy now. But kind of those things together kicked me off and made me start thinking about, what I really needed to do and not just go through the motions. I'd been going through the motions for 20 years. And that was when I started taking my faith seriously and trying to understand and follow what God wanted me to do in my life and start changing the way I lived, the way I behaved, the way I thought, and working on rooting out sinfulness from my life.
Well, I would say ditto. It's important to grow in our faith, and I felt a constant need for conversion, and that's what my mentors and spiritual director were constantly calling out is, conversion is really a daily process. And I could see where I needed to improve in how I was loving my family and loving the Lord, because I have a tendency to very much be a very busy Martha. And we can be a Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus even when we're caring for our family. And with all the busyness going on, taking care of the little details, it can be a prayer.
Awesome. So you guys got married, you started your family. So maybe you just want to talk more about your time in marriage. You had 8 children. So just that time period, ups and downs, or anything you want to say about the time period, both of your marriage and of your family life.
There were struggles, right? Early on, there was financial problems. We were always short on money. And we did a lot of things with minimum amount of dollar expenditures. Raising children has its share of problems. How do you deal with discipline problems? There's always some difficulties in raising every child. Some of them were really pretty easy. Others were much less so. So you just work your way through it and keep going. And you'll never be good enough, but God picks up where you're not. You'll have problems. We had problems in our relationship on how we thought money should be spent, on how we thought we should be disciplining our children, where we should live, where the kids should go to school. You got to talk them through and work them out and realize that they don't get solved. Some of them get solved in 5 minutes. Some of them take weeks and months and years.
I think it can be difficult, like Carl said, when the kids all have such busy schedules. It's very easy to neglect the marriage. And a priest once told us that our children are not a sacrament, but our marriage is. And so it's really important to spend time together in marriage. And we struggled to spend time together. We didn't have regular date nights like we should have, but don't let that fall by the wayside, because that can be difficult to recover. And then, some of the kids, were more challenging than others. Hearing what Carl shared, I can see that it's really important to let everybody know that community is so important, being in a good parish community or a good friend community, because we really can't do it on our own. And we tried to surround ourselves with either good parish community or a good friend community to help us on the journey.
So in terms of faith in your marriage and in your family, what did you do to maintain your faith as a married couple? And what did you do to maintain your faith or pass on the Catholic faith to your children?
In terms of passing on the faith to our children, from very young, we taught them their prayers, Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be. We always said grace at meals. We made sure we always went to Mass. When they were old enough, they got to confession on a regular basis. We prayed the Rosary at home, not every night, but fairly regularly. We got them involved in, not got them involved, we sent them to Catholic schools, at least for a little while. All of them got to go to Catholic schools for a little while, some of them longer than others. We homeschooled the youngest 4 for different periods of time, and that's like a Catholic school. I mean, it's religious foundation in education. We got them to Stations of the Cross during Lent. We brought them to the Rosary at church. Other things that were going on, and religion and faith and belief and morality was discussed at home on a fairly regular basis. Between the two of us, a lot of our growth and staying Catholic was raising the children that way in the early years. As the kids got older, and now after they've left, we pray together a lot. We pray the Rosary across America with Father Rocky on Relevant Radio, not every night, but fairly regularly. We read spiritual books together. We read the Bible together, and we get involved at ministries at church. The last couple of years, we've both been sponsors at RCIA, so we go do that together. Our parish has a marriage catechesis group that we go and participate together as a couple. Dana kind of managed a vocations meeting at one of our parishes years ago that we would go to and work together. What else, love?
Well, and these days we are trying to exercise together, because that is very important, which I neglected for a while, for years, was neglecting my health. And I think it's really important to incorporate staying healthy, eating healthy, and exercising together as a couple or a family, and even individually. I mean, sometimes I need to go off by myself and go for a run, but that's really important to do that as well. So we often go for long walks together, or we go to the Y together.
For those not listening in America, the Y is the YMCA, which is a gym. So in terms of being married, one of the things that you're going to encounter is conflict. So can you elaborate on how you deal with conflict resolution? What do you do to handle that?
So best advice we ever received on that, best advice I ever received, was when there's conflict to be resolved, you need to avoid accusatory statements that put your spouse on the defensive. So you need to discuss how your spouse's behavior is impacting you. So that does 2 things. It keeps your spouse open to discussion, and number 2, it is a good way to let your spouse know what feelings you're having and how their behavior are impacting you. The other thing I mentioned earlier, not all conflicts can get resolved now, right? And some of them are ongoing and take time and effort to resolve. I'm not an advocate of the never go to bed angry mentality. I don't think that's practical. There's times we've been awake for weeks, I think.
I agree with what Carl said, and I try to remember to take correction with humility. Carl has been very gracious when he needs to express concerns, and so I pray that I will be correctable and open to correction and suggestions, and I believe he tries to do the same. I don't know that we've ever sought marriage counseling, but I think that it's really important that anybody would be open to that if they feel a need for it. We have sought mental health counseling in dealing with some of our children, and I think it's crucial to take care of our mental health.
So in terms of how you spent most of your married life in terms of children, Carl, you worked, and Dana, you stayed at home. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Carl, can you talk about your experience working and how you maintained your Catholic faith at work? And then Dana, can you talk about your experience being a stay-at-home mom, also including Catholic school and homeschooling and public school, all those different parts?
In terms of maintaining faith at work, I have had religious items at my desk. I don't, at least for the last 25 years. I'm not sure I remember before that, but I always take the parish religious art calendars that they give away and hang those up at work. Try to have 3 last month, this month, next month. I have crucifixes, I have crosses, I have little carved olive wood statue of Jesus with the crown of thorns. I've got little icons of the Holy Family, of the Pope, religious statements around, and that draws comments from people. Normally other Catholics. I've never been criticized for that. But I've got encouraging statements and started a couple of serious discussions with people just by having those out and around. I also got we mentioned 8 kids. I've got a picture of 8 kids at my desk, and that attracts comments. That attracts comments.
Well, for most of our marriage, I stayed home with the kids. That was something we mutually agreed upon. Plus, when we first were married 46 years ago, it was very difficult to find childcare options. There just wasn't much available, and we really didn't have any family to help us with childcare. I did work some odd jobs over the years, but we lived fairly close to our parish school for the first several years of our marriage. We were across the street, actually, and we had great community, great support. We loved our pastor. We loved the sisters who would stop by the house and hold a baby, or they would invite us over to the convent and we would visit. And it was very hard when we moved to Florida 33 years ago because we chose a place in the country which we thought would be good for the kids, but then we had no Catholic community around us, and we were still trying to find a parish that fit. So our kids were in the public school for the first several years where we first moved to Florida, and that was hard, but God didn't abandon us, and we found a good parish and good community. And so we encouraged the kids to get involved in the youth group, and they were involved in faith formation classes, and I was always trying to find a good retreat for them, but I still had kids in public school too, and that was wonderful as well because it gave me an opportunity to meet other people, and the Lord would just work through them or us, and so He took care of us through homeschooling, public school, Catholic school. So it was all a blessing.
And one of the things you talked about as well is just some of the family traditions that you had in terms of prayer, in terms of family rosary. Anything you wanted to share about some of those rituals and traditions that you had in your own family to maintain faith or to pass on faith to your children?
So like I said, we prayed the rosary, not daily, but regularly with all the kids through the years. And they, especially when they're younger, they seem to want to get involved if they get an opportunity to lead the decade. Right? Can I lead a decade? Can I lead 2 decades? Right? So they like that. Give them an opportunity to lead, and not just be on the responsive end of the prayers.
I also like to say the morning offering with our kids, whether they were homeschooling or in public school, or we might be in the car saying the morning offering. If there was time at breakfast, I might read them the gospel of the day. And then again at lunchtime, I might read them a saint story or some other inspirational story.
One of the things you guys talked about was the struggle about finances in your marriage. How did you overcome that? Any advice as well to other couples who are struggling with finances in their marriage?
I'm not sure we've completely overcome that yet. There's still just some disagreements. But I think the biggest thing that happened to relieve financial stresses and strains was when we started tithing, right? God promises in the book of Malachi that if you give to God, he'll pour out blessings upon you. And every time we've been decided that we need to be generous with God, he's been much more generous coming back to us. And the financial issues eased quite a bit, and I think we were both more on the same page when we took that step. That was a step we agreed upon, and it was scary, very scary. But God hasn't let us down, and I can't believe he ever will.
Beautiful. Anything you want to say?
I think he covered it.
Okay, great. So now you guys your children are now all out of the house, and you are grandparents and great-grandparents. So do you just want to share about your experience now, marriage, with kids out of the house and being grandparents and great-grandparents as well?
You go first.
So when the kids were here, we dedicated a lot of time and effort and energy to those kids. I mean, you simply have to. And as Dana mentioned before, we didn't put as much effort and energy into our relationship as we should have, and as I would recommend anybody during that period of time. And so when the last kid went off to college, we needed to fall in love again, and we have. And we made effort to spend time together, both in the faith aspect of our world and the recreational aspect of our world. Dana talked about exercise and eating well. That's something we've worked on together predominantly since the kid left. We talked about spiritual reading, Bible studies, and the stuff going on at church. That's happened predominantly since the kids moved out. I wish we'd done more of that through the years, but we're going to try to make up for it now.
Yes, I think it has changed a lot with the kids being grown up. And so now I ask the Lord, okay, how do you want me to use my time? And I know first it's for the Lord, and then for Carl, and then for our children and grandchildren, and then the greater community. So we do enjoy spending time together, and it might be exercise, it might be doing a spiritual reading or an activity at church. But I think it's very important to spend time together. And then, of course, serving the community once my other priorities are met. So
One thing that actually helped us spend time together is about the time the youngest daughter went off to college. The world shut down due to COVID. And I was working from home for a year, and you couldn't go anywhere, so we went on walks up and down the road, and we spent a ton of time together during the COVID lockdowns. And it was a good thing for us. I'm sorry that, all those people died from COVID and all the problems we had, but there's blessings even in that.
Yeah, It seemed like COVID was really hard on marriages, or it really strengthened marriages, and everyone had different experiences. So in terms of one thing, actually, just to back up a little bit about your choice to have 8 children, can you talk about that? What you mean when you say openness to life? Why did you choose to have 8 children? Can you elaborate on that?
There's a lot to unpack there. So I wanted a big family, mostly because when my oldest niece was born, she was just such a wonderful kid and just a joy to be around. So I was open to having lots of kids. Catholic Church teaches, and I believe that children are a blessing and are always a blessing. And they teach that birth control and abortion are morally wrong, and we lived that. I'm not sure that we necessarily chose to have 8, but we chose to put God in charge, and that's what He gave us. I know after our 8th one was born, we desperately wanted one more, and it never happened.
Yes, I took the teachings of the church very seriously. I think Humanae Vitae had come out before we were married, and I had gotten some bits and pieces of that, but one of the biggest helps to us early in our marriage was that we took a natural family planning course through the Couple to Couple League, and that was so educational and inspirational. So natural family planning was a blessing, and there was a time after our 6th child was born that I was having some health issues. So, the church does say that, you can limit births, for good reasons, and we did, using natural family planning, avoid pregnancy for some years due to my health issues. And then the 7th and 8th children came, and wow, they were such a blessing. But since then, natural family planning has really evolved, and the science and the expertise, it's just so helpful. There's so much more good information out there now. And then, of course, there's the Theology of the Body, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, Theology of the Body was a teaching from Pope John Paul II. It was a teaching that he did over many years about human sexuality and the relationship between men and women. So it's a beautiful teaching, and much fruit has come from that as well. So in terms of, so I did ask you about grandparents. Can you expand a little bit more about being grandparents, just a little bit more about that? And then the last question will be just advice that you have to young couples or couples who are married, who are in the thick of their marriage with lots of kids. So those 2 questions, life as grandparents, and then advice to couples.
So life as grandparents is an awful lot of fun. You get all the joys of having children, but it's not a 20-year process, right? You get tired and you can go take a break, right? And you're not on duty and on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year for decades, right? There's an awful lot of fun we have with the grandkids. Play games with the grandkids, do work projects with the grandkids, and the teenage boys look forward to those work projects, and so do the teenage daughters, right? So we've had them all busy on major construction projects at 3 different of the kids' houses over the last 2-3 years, and we have a good time. That was half the question. What was the other one?
Any advice?
Advice on
Couples, people thinking about marriage.
Couples
in the thick of marriage.
Yeah. Marriage is beautiful. Marriage is hard. The hard is very much worthwhile. And to love someone is to sacrifice for them. It's not 50-50. You have to be 100% in, and you're giving everything you can to your spouse and your family. And you can't look at what you get back. You have to give. And you won't regret that gift.
Being a grandparent is wonderful, and my time and my love is for the Lord, for my spouse, and for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And so that's where my heart is, all those priorities. And then, of course, if God gives me extra time, then I like to share with the community. But advice I would give is frequent the sacraments and make sure time is given in prayer. Even if you're busy with little children, we can change the world one diaper at a time. And I'm quoting Kimberly Hahn. For the young parents, especially if the young moms are home, listen to really inspirational podcasts. Kimberly Hahn inspired me when I was a young mom, and now she's a grandmother giving wonderful advice still. So plug into wonderful help and talk to other people, because we really can't do this alone. We need community, and we need the Lord and the sacraments, and of course time in prayer.
Anything else either one of you want to add? Dana, anything you want to add?
Hang on for the ride. When we decide to live our life for the Lord, just hang on for the ride of adventure, because I feel like God has taken us places that we never expected. Such adventures. Living in England, just raising farm animals and experiencing all the fun hobbies and activities our kids have done. It's opened up new worlds for us. And so it is such an adventure, really, when we choose to love and follow the Lord and to pursue his will. So hang on for the ride.
All right. Well, thank you to my audience for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll do my best to respond. Have a great day wherever you are in the world, and God bless you. Bye-bye.